Plus, the Tigers, man, in second place in their division after being literally having the worst record in all of baseball a year ago. It's nice to see them improving. There's still a couple games under 500. They're still 11 games behind the Chicago White Sox for the division lead, but they're in second place, and at least Detroit fans have something to hold their head up for, because I don't think the Lions are going to be one of those things when the season rolls on, but that's a story for another time and another day. Spencer, go ahead. Let's get to Nightcap, man.
Hockey players, as you know, are warriors. They don't give up. They come to play every game.
It's time for Nightcap, a cupful of the Vegas Golden Knights. From highlights to interviews to special events, the puck starts here.
Well, we're in the off-season league this year. We saw a pretty exciting season, even though there was a pandemic. Unique scheduling with almost every team playing like 2 or 3 home games against the same squad. It was an interesting season, but they got through it. And changes in the off season, just like I expected. They did announce yesterday all the game times, or I should say Friday, they announced all the game times of the Vegas Golden Knights. They'll open their season Tuesday, October 12th at 7 o'clock. Very fitting. They will be playing the NHL's newest franchise, the Seattle Kraken. And we've been waiting for them to come around for a little bit. And Seattle, we all knew, was the next team vying to get a hockey team. They did. And it should be interesting, but it's kind of cool. The 2 most recent expansion teams will face off at the beginning of the season. I like it. And before I ask Mags about some of the trades, which I've been dying to get his opinion on, I mean, Doug Douglas has been great filling in the last couple of weeks. Always loved Doug doing the show. And again, with Doug being the press box announcer for the Vegas Golden Knights, he sees every home game. So he's at Pro. And of course, Chris has been with us for several years with Lotus Broadcasting and been producing my show, man, at least since I think 2015 or so.
Yeah,
but it's.
By the way, Spencer, I'm still hearing the echo, but this is my 5th season going into covering the Golden Knights. I mean, since day one.
You got to go on. You got to travel with them in their first season. I know you went to Winnipeg for the conference finals, which was really cool in season 1, and really got a lot of great. Got to know a lot of the players and realized, I think what I've known for a long time is that NHL players out of the 4 major sports in this country, NHL players are probably the easiest to interview and the most humble of all the professional athletes. Maybe they make the least amount, but nowadays every good player in every major sport's a millionaire, so they could easily have gigantic egos. Some of them, of course, do, but I've always found hockey players to be my favorite players to interview. They give you the interview, they talk to you, they're usually nice guys, and that's probably because most of them aren't American, so I mean, that would go to say, but real quick before I get into that, Chris, I wanted to talk to you about some of the moves, because I saw them coming. I kind of had a minor argument with Mike McKenna here about them, and yet 2 of the 3 players I saw exiting are both gone, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we've kind of beat that story to a dead horse, but I want to hear your take on it. But the Olympic break, as a reminder, no final agreement or decision has been made to this point regarding the possible participation of the National Hockey League players in the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, which is this coming winter. Per the collective bargaining agreement, the league is supposed to pause from February 7th to the 22nd to accommodate NHL player participation in the Olympic Games. The participation, should COVID conditions worsen, that's the biggest issue, obviously, otherwise pose a threat to the health and safety of the NHL players, or any other reason that may warrant such decision. In the event NHL players participate in the 2022 Winter Olympics, the NHL regular season will resume on Wednesday, February 23rd. If for whatever reason there is no NHL player participation in the Olympics, a revised regular season schedule will be released. But and I've gotten all these questions like, it's so unfair, how come the NBA the NBA has all their players, but they don't play in the regular season, the NBA? Well, how come Major League Baseball players didn't take a break? Because only a couple of countries would really benefit from the major league players taking a break, and the majority of the team that would benefit would be the United States. In the National Hockey League, as I just mentioned, there are so many foreign players from all over the world that play in that league. A lot of them want to go and have pride and participate in the Olympics for their country, and I think of all four major sports, it makes most sense for the NHL to take a break. I mean, the WNBA took a break, but the reason for that is more not so much for foreign player participation on their particular teams. It's for the notoriety of women's basketball. An Olympic gold medal for a particular team, I just think it bodes well for women's basketball in general, especially in this country, as the WNBA really gained traction the last few years with the endorsement of Kobe Bryant, who was such a great ambassador for the WNBA. I don't know that anyone will be able to replace him, but that's why the WNBA takes a break, is because really it's good for the sport. Major League Baseball, it would not be good for the sport for them to take a month off. They already had a really shortened 60-game season last year with all that's going on. I get it, but the National Hockey League people, it makes sense, again, because you have so many foreign players. Their national teams would be nothing, and it would be almost a joke, some of them, without some of the NHL players coming back and playing for them. So that's really the reason. Don't need to get much more into that. I think there will be a stoppage of play. I think the NHL will participate in the Olympics. So I think, and it's all per the collective bargaining agreement. And again, it makes sense. Chris, real quick before we leave Nightcap, I wanted to get your take. I not just on Fleury and Ryan Reeves departing. I said to McKenna, I thought three players that were hugely popular in Las Vegas would not be Vegas Golden Knights last year. I'm very happy that to this point I was wrong about one of them, and that was Jonathan Marchessault. So I thought, based on the way he played late in the season, and especially in the first couple rounds of the playoffs, that Jonathan had as much trade value now as he was ever going to have, especially where he's at in his career. He's in the prime of his career, getting up into the 30-year range. So I thought it made sense, but I'm really happy they didn't get rid of him, because what's really cool is they'll be going into their fifth season, as you will, with the Vegas Golden Knights, but with that line still intact of Marchessault, Smith, and of course William Karlsson. And I love it, and I'm glad that DeBoer has decided to keep those three guys. I thought for sure Smith and Karlsson would be here. I just thought Marchessault might get released, but I'm no surprise whatsoever in Marc-Andre Fleury to me, and no surprise in Ryan Reeves, as we saw his playing time diminish as they got later into the playoffs. He wasn't hurt. I think DeBoer felt that with the emergence of Keegan Colasar, also the physical presence of William Carrier, with both those guys having the ability not to only play physical, but also having the ability to put the puck in the net, they make them more valuable than Reeves, who, when Reeves scores a goal, it's a national holiday. But what I will say is Reeves was a tremendously popular player. I laugh because at the beginning, in his first couple of games, he was getting booed by Vegas Golden Knights fans who were getting acclimated to hockey and not realizing how big his physical presence would be to this team, which it has been over the past few seasons. He's been great. He's been one of the spokesmen, great in the community. He's going to be sorely missed, although he'll get another fresh start. And I think he'll do well. Marc-Andre Fleury, Chris, and this is the guy I want to talk to you about. I said last week to Doug Douglas, and I'll say to you right now, the one thing I think this move does for Marc-Andre Fleury more than anything else is it got the Vegas community right behind him in a big way, and let everyone kind of forget about the flub, the gaffe in Game 3 that I don't care what anyone says. It was monumental, and it was potentially legacy damaging. That's how bad of a goal that was, which really turned the series around. There's no question Vegas Golden Knights didn't show up. I've heard all the arguments. Hey, it was their offense. Mark Stone, Pacioretty, Pietrangelo, for God's sakes, led the team in goals. Well, it's okay. Last year, a defenseman led the team in scoring, and Shea Theodore in the postseason too. That can happen. But what can't happen is a seasoned Hall of Fame, one of the greatest goaltenders of all time, cannot nonchalant a puck even for 1 second. He lost his concentration because it was an easy thing for 1 split second, and it changed the course of that game, and I think changed the dynamic of the series. I love Marc-Andre Fleury. To me, his legacy is not going to be damaged. He's one of the greatest of all time, but I think to a lot of people and NHL fans, it's like, oh my God. To Vegas fans, Chris, I think the reprieve is with Fleury going away. It lets everyone complain about that, get sad, get upset, and they kind of slide the gaffe into the background, which I think benefits Marc-Andre Fleury tremendously.
Well, what they've really done is they've divided the fan base, because you have a section of Golden Knight fans who are angry and are not thrilled with the way things went down. There's still the unconfirmed rumor that Fleury found out on Twitter. He said he doesn't have social media, so that kind of would put that to rest. But nonetheless, Brian, I think you may be onto something. You're right, because nobody's really talking about that gaffe now, right? Nobody's talking about the mistake. And where I disagree with you is I don't feel like it cost them the series. I don't think that it was legacy damaging. Look, it was a mistake, but the reality is the Golden Knights on paper were a lot better than the Montreal Canadiens. That mistake should not have mattered in the least. They still lost that game in overtime. That's on the team. That's not on Marc-Andre Fleury. But, the other trade you talked about, Ryan Reeves, I don't think anyone was caught off guard by that. Maybe the fans, but I think those of us who are close to the team kind of had a feel that was coming. I mean, I was surprised when they re-signed him last year. Obviously, it worked out a little bit, but, his playing time diminished. Like you said, the emergence of William Carrier certainly added a little bit something more to that team. Keegan Colasar is a guy who I think can fill that Ryan Reeves role, and he's got a little more offensive upside. He's younger. He's cheaper. It made sense from a financial standpoint. And look, he gets to go back and play with Gerard Gallant, who's now the coach of the New York Rangers. Obviously, the Rangers made that move because of Tom Wilson ragdolling basically their entire team when there was a play involving Artemi Panarin. So that's a move the Rangers made because Tom Wilson lives rent-free in the head of the New York Rangers management. Remember, they completely cleaned out their front office after that. They made all sorts of moves. They've gone out and they've added a couple of beefy players. So that's a move from the standpoint that the Rangers, it made a lot of sense. Where I will say I like Robin Lehner. I think Robin Lehner's a really good goalie, and I think a lot of fans are rallying behind Robin Lehner. I see a lot of his tweets on social media, and I see the way that the fan base reacts and interacts with him, and he reacts and interacts back with them. And I think that's great because I feel like that's kind of what the purpose of Twitter is, right? For the fans to have an outlet to their favorite players and their favorite players to be able to speak their mind to their fans. Maybe they don't always get to do that through people like you and me in the media. So I think from that aspect, I think the Golden Knights will be fine. I'm not sure about the addition of Yevgeny Dadonov. He had an off season last year in Ottawa, and maybe there were some circumstances. His family was unable to travel to be with him in Ottawa. So he came off a couple of really good seasons in Florida. He goes to Ottawa, where I feel like a lot of times careers go to die. And he had a bad season, but the Golden Knights were able to bring him in. And look, it shouldn't be lost in all of this that the team will not have Alex Tuch for at least maybe half the season. He's expected to come back right around that Olympic break. So they're going to need to find some punch on that third line. I'm not sure if Pete DeBoer is going to shuffle the lines and break apart the misfit line, but I kind of feel like Dadonov on the right with Marchessault and Carlson could be a pretty good line, and it will allow Dadonov to really excel because he'll have another wing on the other side that is shoot first, and William Karlsson is, of course, going to be there to bail them out defensively. So I'm not sure what the plan is with Dadonov. Maybe he slots in on the third line. I don't know. The X factor in all this is going to be Nolan Patrick. Are we going to get the Nolan Patrick that had 30 points as a rookie? Or are they going to get the Nolan Patrick who had 9 points last season? My cousin's a Flyer fan. He was thrilled that they were able to move Nolan Patrick. Maybe this will be a little bit of motivation for Nolan Patrick, coming playing with the general manager that he's very familiar with. He's comfortable with Kelly McCrimmon. So maybe that changes the trajectory of Nolan Patrick's career. But this is a guy who was a number 2 overall pick. Obviously, there's a tremendous upside there. The question is, can the team get him to live up to those expectations that had him as the number 2 overall pick the same year the Golden Knights became a franchise? So I think he's the X factor in all of it. Real quick, I don't think the NHL players will be in Beijing because I don't believe there will be a Beijing Olympics. I think they will be either postponed or canceled. Tokyo was a disaster for the Olympics. They took a lot of heat, especially in Japan. They're taking a lot of heat. The government of Japan is catching a lot of criticism. I don't think the Olympics will take place because the Delta variant is running rampant. Chinese vaccines are not proving to be very effective against the Delta variant. They're going back into lockdowns in China. And for China, it's a lot different than it was for Japan. I know people who were in Beijing, and it was a showcase. They wanted to showcase Beijing to the world and say, hey, look, we're just as modern, we're just as cool as the West. Japan, people already knew that. It wasn't necessarily a showcase for Japan as it was NBC needing to fill something during the summer months when they're waiting for Sunday Night Football to get started. So I don't believe we will see a 2022 Beijing Olympics. We may see them next year, but I don't think they happen. I do think NHL players will be in the next Winter Olympics. I just don't think it's going to be in February.
It'll be interesting to see. It's a really good point that you make. But being that February is that far away, and I know they want them desperately, but you are right. They're not going to have the debacle of Tokyo. I enjoyed the Tokyo Olympics, but it was really weird.
We were supposed to go. I was supposed to be.
Yeah, I know you were, and it was really weird for me, especially like in sports soccer, that when the stadiums are packed and to be able to hear the players talk to each other, as unique as that is, and as cool and as a learning experience it is for us as fans, it just takes so much away from the game to not have that electricity in the air and not have fans in the stadium. We even saw it yesterday at Allegiant Stadium with the Raiders, which is a good segue into that. That it's just such a different element, even in a preseason game when a stadium is packed. I wasn't there, but I watched it on television. Incredibly interesting seeing fans back in the stadium. We got used to it a little bit last year without them there, and I thought it was very cool. And, going into that, Spence, Chris, the Raiders game yesterday, the debut of the Raiders, Spencer did mention, all the starters on defense played. He's concerned about that, being a Raiders fan, as I would be as well, because it's like, what are you doing, risking injury with your starting unit when you really just don't have much depth on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen that last year, a horrible secondary last year, not a really good, good linebacking core, maybe an decent up front defensively, but that was it. And yet, like I told Spencer, I believe Gruden has to do this. You've got to see what you have and find the pieces to put in place and make sure you've got the right guys in the right spots. And the only way you can do that is game reps. So I wasn't that surprised that he played these guys, but I do think early on, when everyone's getting their game legs underneath him, you are taking a big risk. Obviously, he didn't care the risk about his third string quarterback, Nathan Peterman, who, other than one horrible pass, I thought played so much better than I expected him. The last time I saw that guy in San Diego play football, oh my God. I mean, I didn't think he was a D2 college player, but Nathan Peterman obviously has worked very, very hard. 29-39 for 246 yards, no touchdowns, that one interception, but he did seem to make good decisions, did tuck the ball down when he had to, use his feet when he had to, and definitely a different player than the last time I've seen the guy play. I think he cemented himself as the third string quarterback for the Raiders. That guy Cook is who they just picked up. He was just somebody to have in case Peterman went down yesterday, because there was nobody behind him with both Carr and Mariota out of the lineup. But I thought it was a good opener for the Raiders, and I do think, Spencer, you are going to see a improved defense for the Raiders. Not dramatically improved. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, but guys like Casey Hayward Jr. I think are huge additions, especially that secondary, because he's a guy that's been in the league 10 years. He gets reunited, with Gus Bradley. The two of them were together for 5 years in San Diego. The guy's made 2 Pro Bowls. And whenever you're a Pro Bowl guy that's been in the league, a decade or more, you are going to be respected, especially by young players. And if you look at the Raiders last year, Spencer, their secondary with Arnett and Mullen Jr. and, of course, Jonathan Abram, who you don't like, between the 3 of those guys, they average under 23 years old. It's like 22.67 years. That is so inexperienced. The last time a team did any kind of damage with that young of a secondary, you got to go all the way back to the San Francisco 49ers when they won their very first Super Bowl. They had a secondary, which most people don't realize how bizarre this is and how great Joe Montana is adding to his legacy, because nobody other than a Montana fan, or not a Montana fan, but a 49er fan, could probably tell you any of the running backs that played for that very first San Francisco team. I guarantee you Wendell Tyler was not on that team, so don't think he was one of them. A lot of people come at me with Wendell Tyler. He was part of the second one. And then, of course, Roger Craig came later. The bottom line is the starting running backs of that team were Linville Elliott and Bill Ring. You ever heard of them? Earl Cooper, who eventually became a tight end, was their fullback. Nobody. And Montana did it with nobody. Dwight Clark, he wasn't that famous till he made the catch. And Freddie Solomon on the other side, people probably didn't even know he was the number 1 receiver on that team. Pretty bizarre. I mean, Russ Francis was a big-name tight end getting up in his career, but no skill players. And defensively, they were pretty strong. But their secondary, which was amazing, which was leading me to say this based on the Raiders secondary, you had Ronnie Lott, who was a rookie on one corner. You had Eric Wright, who was a rookie at the other corner. Your starting free safety, well, he was another rookie named Carlton Williamson out of Pittsburgh. And then you had one defensive guy that molded this team together that was probably the least famous out of all of them, but he had been there for 8 years out of the University of Michigan. His name was Dwight Hicks. He was the strong safety, and he really molded that unit of all rookies. And even their 5th defensive back, if you look back to that team, his name was Lynn Thomas. He was also a rookie, a teammate of Carlton Williamson's at Pittsburgh. So when they put in their nickel package, 4 of the 5 were rookies, and they won a Super Bowl. That just doesn't happen. But then again, look at the future of that team. Ronnie Lott, arguably the best cornerback that ever lived, and eventually a free safety. They were really good. But this Raiders team is the one thing I like about the Raiders team. They're not the fastest defensively in the secondary, but Arnett and Jonathan Abram are hitters. They're guys that bring the wood. Abram sometimes to a fault because he gets out of position trying to make hits. But that's where Casey Hayward's going to come in, especially with a guy like Damon Arnett, who I think has a huge upside, played great in college at Ohio State, and was hurt last year. Now he's healthy, and with the tutelage of Casey Hayward, I see Damon Arnett getting a lot better and having a couple of cornerbacks that can actually get the job done and maybe even cover one-on-one. And I'll tell you, based on the interior of that Raiders defense still, boy, you're going to need the over the top, because they're going to have to load the box with 8 men and count on those 4 secondary members to get the job done. It's going to be a tall order. But I liked what I saw overall from the Raiders. I like the offense. I think Darren Waller, it's not going on a stretch. He's already a top 5 receiver. I think he'll even take another step this year if he gets healthy. And I liked what I saw for the initial game, the initial coming out party of the Raiders. And one other guy I'll talk about, Spencer, and then you can take the floor on this one, because I mean, they're your team. But how about Javin White? I mean, led the team in tackles, 5 tackles, 5 solos, 1 assist. Really impressive. And late in the game, I mean, the last minute of the game, he was flying. He wanted to make sure he was noticed and make sure he's on the regular team roster. If he is, it'll be as a special team player this year. But I think he's going to be noticed when Gruden looks back at the film, especially the last minute. He made 3 of the last 4 tackles. And the only reason he probably didn't make the last one is because he got a stinger and got pulled out of the game. And immediately he stands up, he's shaking his arms, telling him, "Get away from me, I'm fine. It was a stinger." And if you looked at Javin White, which I was checking him out on the field, he is definitely bulked up. He was like a string bean at UNLV. His arms now look good. He's still a little bit skinny in the lower half of his body, but he has definitely beefed up the upper half of his body and looks like an NFL linebacker. He's got the height, and I'm kind of excited for him, Spencer. I think he's actually going to make the active 53-man roster this year.
I think he will too, actually, as a special teams guy, if he's going to be flying around like that. And at the end of the day, it is a preseason game, so you can't take too much away from it. I liked what I saw from Nathan Peterman. I mean, it's about as good as you can get from a third-string quarterback. He might be the best third-string quarterback in the NFL, whatever that's worth. That runner, I think his name was Vargas, or he played a really great game.
Yes, he did.
And the announcers were like going crazy over him. But no, he did play pretty serviceable, and he may have to replace Jalen Richard at the beginning of the season, who's dealing with that injury. Keelan Doss also had a pretty decent game. He seems to be more of like a preseason magic kind of guy. So we'll see if he can actually translate that, to the regular season. I remember him last year, he had like one catch and he fumbled it at the goal line. So he didn't have a great, first NFL season as an undrafted rookie, but it looks like he's getting better. It looks like he's dedicated to the team. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I didn't like seeing all the starters out there. I know you want to see what you got, but no one else in the NFL is doing that to the rate that they had. And just see guys like Cleveland Farrell out there dominating like third string offensive linemen. It's just kind of disheartening. I agree with you that their defense is getting better this season, but it's such a low bar to clear. They're still going to be probably 20th to, whatever the last in the league is, just because they have no pass rush still. Yannick Ngakoue, maybe he's going to get a lot better. And I believe they also signed a defensive tackle recently, but he's pretty old. So we'll see if they
McCoy he's been around for a while. He's been hurt. He was hurt last year, but I'll tell you, he's another one of those veteran type of leaders, Spencer, that can help mold a defensive unit. He is a vocal leader. And the one thing about Gerald McCoy throughout his career, what he's been praised for, is being the ultimate team player, a guy that motivates guys around him. You can never go wrong when you have that type of guy. The key is the leg injuries. He's got to get on the field, because as much of a leader as you are, if you're on the sideline like years ago, ML Carr was at the end of his career for the Boston Celtics waving a towel doesn't motivate your team. What motivates your team is you being in there sweating and bleeding with the crew going to battle. And McCoy is going to have to get healthy and be able to be on the field this year and play if he can. Him and Hayward, those are two leaders that they really need on the defensive side of the football. And I like what I'm seeing there.
Yeah, this is just my last point. So the best case scenario for those two, for the Raiders, is that they turn out to be something similar to what Richard Seymour and Justin Houston were, I believe, back in like 2010, back in the day when they had a pretty decent defensive line. I just won't believe it until I see it. To me, this is still a 7-win football team, but maybe they'll win 8.
Well, we shall definitely see, and some interesting stuff here when we speak about football with UNLV, which we're going to talk about. I didn't put it on the log, but I'm going to sneak it in for a second in a minute. What I do want to talk about, the Raiders win the game. They play again next week. They're on the road. They get to play the Los Angeles Rams, and that is going to be a telltale sign. I think Mariota will be back next week, and that's some good work for him, because the Rams, who have beefed up on both sides of the ball, are definitely going to be a contender in the NFC this year. And best defensive player in the game, maybe the best football player in the world right now in Aaron Donald. I mean, that guy never, ever sees a snap where he is not double teamed at this point in his career. And of course, they picked up Matthew Stafford for the Lions to boost their offense. And I think that's going to be a really good second preseason game test for the Raiders next week, plus on the road, to see how they do. You can't base very much on the preseason, but I think the Raiders are really looking at this preseason to make themselves get better. And again, Spencer, that's why I think you saw so many starters play into the second quarter defensively, which does get scary. And it's a huge risk factor. But again, when your defense is that bad the year before, man, those guys got to suffer up front. Let's make them good and let's get them better. You don't want to play that much in the preseason. Well, damn it, be better. And that's what I think Gruden is saying to this squad. But a big year for the Raiders, as far as, that we need to see an improvement from this year than the past couple of years. An 8-8 season, or 8-9 season, whatever it is now, with the extra game getting added, is not going to suffice for the Raiders or for owner Mark Davis. And I'm telling you, is John Gruden on the hot seat? Absolutely not. Don't even put that in your head right now. But will he be next year if this team lays an egg? Yes, he will be at this time next year. If the team lays an egg this year and say wins 5 or 6 games, that will be completely unacceptable. Obviously, unless something like Derek Carr went down again, then maybe there'd be a little bit of a built-in excuse. I know you're shaking your head that he might, but we'll see. Real quickly, the other thing I want to talk about the NFL before I jump to UNLV is that, the NFL, something kind of special yesterday. We've never had that many quarterbacks taken with the first 15, 16 picks in the NFL draft in history. And they were the 4 top guys all made their debuts yesterday. Pretty interesting, starting with the number 1 player picked in the draft, the most anticipated quarterback coming out of college in I don't know how many years. Trevor Lawrence, since he was a freshman at Clemson, has been making history. And you got Trevor Lawrence at Jacksonville. The team didn't fare very well, but in the 2 possessions he played, he was sacked twice, got sacked right off the get-go. One of them I thought he took too much time on, but he's a rookie. He went 6 of 9 for 71 yards. And doesn't it figure, it seems right off the get-go, his favorite receiver, Spencer? I don't know if you saw it yesterday. 3 catches for 52 yards, a 17-yard average. Marvin Jones Jr., the ex-Detroit Lion. Go ahead, let me hear that.
Back to throw on 3rd down and 10. Lawrence with time, all kinds of time. Great protection, turns and slings the ball. And he's got Marvin Jones, who makes a dramatic catch over a bent defender's back.
Yeah, Spencer's laughing because he sees my pain. It's like last year, the Detroit Lions, you look at the Lions this year, okay, they get rid of Stafford, but it was after they let Kenny Galladay already go. But last year, you've got Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones Jr. I'll bet no worse than the top 5 NFL receiver duos in the league. They dished them both. Of course, Marvin Jones Jr. now catching passes from Trevor Lawrence Jr., and you've got Kenny Galladay in New York playing for the Giants. How beautiful is that? And Detroit uses their 2nd or 3rd pick to get a wide receiver. They have nobody. Like I said, what they do have is Detroit has one of the better offensive lines in football. The question is, who the hell are they blocking for? I don't know. I know Jared Goff's happy about it. The rest of us, we're all scratching our heads. But Marvin Jones Jr., Trevor Lawrence is raving about the guy. He really, really solidified himself. He was great in Cincinnati. He stepped up even another notch when he got to the Detroit Lions. And now, of course, he's a Jacksonville Jaguar, probably on his way to the playoffs this year. But Trevor Lawrence's performance, I am going to give in his first game, I'll give it a B rating. And most people say, wow, that's really high. It was his first game, and everyone in the world is watching him. The expectations are through the roof. So for him to come out and perform that way, didn't toss a pick, took a couple of big hits. I like it a lot. They lost to Cleveland 23-13, but that's not indicative of what you're going to get out of Trevor Lawrence as the season goes on. Jacksonville will be a much improved team, mostly because of Trevor Lawrence. I think their defense will play a little better too, but this is a team on the upswing, and depending on the moves they make, and to have a coach like Urban Meyer, who is just won wherever he's gone in college, I think he will be able to make the transition to the National Football League, and I think Jacksonville's going to be a fun team to watch in the future. The number 2 guy, Zach Wilson, people argue that he had the best debut, even though his numbers might not have been the best, but the Jets beat the Giants, and Mags, I'll let you jump in on this one because the Jets are your squad. A lot of people felt they gave up on Sam Darnold way too quick and that this kid will end up being a good football player in the National Football League, but the Jets were just enamored with Zach Wilson. He really came on his senior year at BYU. He shows he can throw the football all over the field. He can make all 4 throws necessary. He also seems to know when to run the ball, but 13-19 for 127 yards, no touchdowns, no interception. And a lot of people, I heard some experts saying that they thought out of the 4 of them, his debut was the best, even though Justin Fields had a hell of a second half for the Bears. And Trey Lance, who took a little bit of a beating in San Francisco, I thought played well, but I'm not going to argue. Zach Wilson, I'm going to say for first preseason game, which is very little to take to bank on, but I'm going to say he exceeded my expectations off the get-go. Chris, are you happy with Zach Wilson being behind center in New York?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I think they did give up on Darnold too soon. The reality is Adam Gase is probably the worst coach in the history of the NFL. So, I mean, the reality is Darnold may go the Ryan Tannehill route and escape the clutches of Adam Jones and his anemic offensive mind. If let's put it this way, Adam Gase is so bad at coaching that Ryan Tannehill went from being one of the worst coach or quarterbacks in the NFL in Miami. Now he's a top 10 quarterback in Tennessee. His passer rating is ridiculous now. If the same thing happens with Sam Darnold, I don't know how Adam Gase can ever look at himself in the mirror because he's a disgrace. And the reality is that if Zach Wilson doesn't live up to expectations and Sam Darnold goes to Carolina by the way, just want to point this out. The New York Jets had an opportunity to hire Matt Rule, who is the coach in Carolina, and people are raving about this guy and the fact that Carolina could be a dark horse in that division. The Jets turned him down to hire Adam Gase because they didn't want Adam Rule to bring in his own coordinators. The Jets wanted to have a say in that. this could blow up in the face of the New York Jets. In fact, as a guy who has supported this team for 35 years, I expect it to blow up in the face of the New York Jets. They're just as they are the Lions of the AFC.
Almost. The only difference is they've got a Super Bowl and a couple of other AFC championship games.
Yeah, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but they've probably won in the Super Bowl. We can't get into the lines. You know me, Chris. Don't get me going on that. But the bottom line is, I'll bet if you look, the Jets have won about 9 to 10 playoff games in the Super Bowl era. Again, I'll say it over and over again. The Lions have won one and never sniffed the Super Bowl. It's repulsive. But that's a story for another day. Me and Spencer are working on something special for the Detroit Lions that we'll have out in a couple of months, and hopefully everyone will check it out and get to feel my pain and every Detroit Lions fans out there pain. But I like Zach Wilson. I agree with you. I think Sam Darnold, you can't go all in on a quarterback a couple of years ago and make a change. There's so many more problems in New York for the Jets than the quarterback position, and that's where they're going to blame it on, but that makes it the easiest. And Big Ace is going to have to do something with Zach Wilson and turn it around. I don't think he can either. I don't like the guy. Worst coach in NFL history, I don't know, man. Marty Morningwig, Marinelli, 0-16. We've had some pretty doozies. Even our last one, Matt Patricia. I'll leave it right there. But also Trey Lance made his debut, the quarterback out of North Dakota State, highly touted, a guy that Kyle Shanahan just loves in San Francisco. And yesterday he went 5 of 14, 128 yards, 1 touchdown. He was sacked 4 times. He played 29 plays in 8 series. He threw an 80-yard touchdown pass to Trent Sherfield, which covered almost 50 yards in the air. And just by the way, so that was on the second drive of the game. Just so you know, Jimmy Garoppolo had 1 pass with an air distance of 40 yards or more all of last season. Trevor Lawrence. How about Trey Lance does it in his second series in the preseason? So pretty amazing. Go ahead. You want to play that, Spencer? This was Trey Lance on his second drive.
Right wing next to McGlinchey. They're going to boot the quarterback left. Here he goes, deep downfield. Trent Sherfield's got it. Trey Area.
Great call on the game and great play by Trey Lance to spot that and be able to make the throw almost 50 yards in the air. The kid's got a hell of an arm, and he was on the run. Really, really good and impressive. I like what I saw to him. And, of course, Justin Fields, who you guys are going to laugh at this, and I hope I don't get in trouble. But the bottom line is, for his name from now on is Marge Simpson. When I see the guy without a helmet on, he looks like Marge Simpson. I'm sorry, he does. So Marge Simpson played really, really well yesterday. Other than he started really bad. He was 2 for 6, 10 yards, 2 rushes, 0 points on his first 3 drives. But he got way better as the game went on. He ended up 14 of 20, 142 yards, 1 touchdown in the air. And he also ran for a touchdown that looked really good. And from what I saw, my prediction is, because the Bears were very adamant that he will be playing behind the red pea shooter. Don't call him the red rifle anymore. Please don't call him that. The red pea shooter will start for the Chicago Bears. I say at the latest by game 4, Justin Fields will be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears, and everyone in Detroit will be saying, why did we pass on him? Okay, that's what they'll be saying, because, yeah, we've got a great offensive tackle. I think a guy that is so good that he reminds me of some of the great ones like Anthony Munoz, who's one of the best ever at Cincinnati. Reminds me of the guy. But you've got to have somebody to block for before you draft an offensive line, and we don't, or they don't. I'm not going to say we anymore. That's enough about that. I really want to quickly talk about UNLV because we are low on time, and I want to get the fact this. All I want to say about UNLV, guys, is hallelujah. And boy, what is Missouri thinking? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the departure of Desiree Reed-Francois. I said when Tina Kunze-Murphy was here and when they hired Desiree Reed-Francois, UNLV will never see a worse athletic director than Tina Kunze-Murphy. Tina, I sincerely apologize for that statement. Desiree Reed-Francois, the worst in the history of UNLV. I mean, other than the fact that she wore some pretty fly Nike shoes once in a while, and I think her hiring of Kevin Kruger on the way out, knowing his father is going to be able to consult, was the only 2 things she ever did good at UNLV. And the sneakers, she won of the game. She was wearing these awesome Nike sneakers. My son recognized. Jake goes, Dad, those are real expensive and really fly. So she wears fly sneakers, and she hired a decent coach on the way out. Everything else she did was complete garbage. She was very difficult to get interviewed on. She skirted every question you ever answered. She was good at skirting questions. I'll give her that. That's a good AD. Eric Harper, who's been the associate athletic director, been around for a while. He was elevated to interim athletic director. He will be throughout this football season and probably for the next 6 or 7 months, but they will get somebody else in, and hopefully they'll go on a good hunt. I don't want to get into it. My friend Brian Shapiro made a comment that he thought Dwayne Knight, the longtime golf coach, would make a good AD. He knows this school. He knows the area. I thought that was an interesting thought. I hadn't even thought of that one. Obviously, everyone would love to, to see Kevin Kruger's father, Lon, be the athletic director at UNLV. God, would that be incredible? He has no interest in that job. He has an interest in just being a consultant for his son. I'm sure he'll do a great job of that. But Desiree Reed-Francois, c'est la vie. See you later. Good riddance. Goodbye. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, and every other superlative I can think of. She's gone, and I don't know what the University of Missouri is thinking. They will become one of the worst D1 programs in the Power 5 conferences, in my opinion, with her being the athletic director, unless she stays completely the hell out of the way. I have no idea how she got that job. Politics. I can think of a few other things. I'm not going to say them on the radio, but I'm blown away Missouri would make a decision like that. What are they basing it on? The fact that Iowa State hired TJ Otzelfarter? Is that what they're basing it on? Because they're saying, wow, he did a horrible job here. Kevin Kruger's the only guy I would ever say that was elevated from a losing team to head coach that maybe was a good move, because at the beginning it's like, wow, this has to have something to do with Lon. But I really like Kevin Kruger. I thought he was very succinct and elegant in the way he answered all the questions, because I definitely hit him hard when he was on the show, and I thought he did a phenomenal job, answering the questions as to why he thought he was elevated. How much does he think his father played a role in that decision? I thought he couldn't have answered them any better, and they were hard hit questions. So I'm going to leave it right there. Again, see you later. Goodbye. I wish he would have. I'm not going to say that. I was about to say something about the football coach, but all I'll say, and I said this before about Marcus Arroyo. The bottom line is, we'll see. The proof's going to be in the pudding. What I like is him saying, and a lot of the media saying, well, they're going to be better this year. How can they be worse? They lost every game last year. And in the Wyoming game, the second play from scrimmage, I told Spencer live on this show that both of his parents could have driven their own semi through the hole that Wyoming opened up against UNLV's defense, the second play from scrimmage, and ran for like a 45-yard touchdown. And the game did nothing but get worse from that point on. So are they going to be better? They have to be. But my God in heaven, how you can't recruit at UNLV now with the Fertitta Center, thanks to Tony Sanchez, great community guy, just needed to be a coordinator before he became a head coach. A quality guy, stand-up guy, love Tony, just don't think he was the guy for the job. But the bottom line is, I'm starting to think that Marcus Arroyo isn't either. And again, one other thing, as a head football coach, I don't care what, you never block members from the media from your Twitter account or something like that. You're acknowledging that you pay attention. We know you do, but you don't acknowledge that. That's immaturity. And wow, let's see what he does this year. And I can say all this because he won't come on my show. He won't come on any show because they've got some kind of secret thing going on at UNLV. What that secret is, I don't know. Matter of fact, I don't know that I want to know, because it probably doesn't smell very good. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's hit fact this, Spencer, before we run out of time.
Fact this. If you don't like the facts, take your ass back to bed. Fact this.
Yeah, it's a fact. This is the year of the no-hitter, and it continued in Major League Baseball. And the one that happened on Saturday, the no-hitter, was the most unlikely of all. This no-hitter, the 8th one in 2021, was thrown by 27-year-old Tyler Gilbert of the Arizona Diamondbacks in his first ever Major League start. Guys, that is pretty damn impressive. He had 3 appearances this year. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think of this guy. He was drafted back in 2015 by the Phillies, and then he was claimed by Arizona from the Dodgers in the Rule 5 draft last year. He played college baseball at USC. I'd never heard of the guy in my life. He throws a no-hitter, 102 pitches, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks. And by the way, all 3 of his walks were I can't think of, who's the guy's name that he walked 3 times? But it's pretty incredible. Yeah, I think it was Tommy Pham. He gave up all 3 of the walks came to Tommy Pham. But what an incredible performance by this guy. It's been done 4 times in Major League history that a person is on their first career start has pitched a shutout. It hasn't happened in 53 years, and that was Bobo Holloman did it in 1953. The 2 others, Spencer, I know me and my old statistics, but I had to look this up. The 2 others, in 1892, you had Bumpus Jones did it, and in 1891, Ted Binghamstein did it. Those are your 3 guys in Major League Baseball history that pitched a no-hitter in their first ever Major League start. That's incredible.
No, it's incredible. And that he walked Tommy Pham 3 times. Yeah. It's just I just double checked there. Look, I mean, I've looked up statistically and like the percentage of games that are no hitters, and it's like 0.001%. So the fact that he did it is truly incredible. And I was happy in high school to get the ball over the plate when I pitched.
Hey, it was his third no-hitter in Diamondbacks history. You got to give this guy all kinds of credit. 27 years old, got a little interview on Sports Center. I mean, 0 to hero. If he never pitched another game in his life, that would make it. You got to love that. And real quickly, I want to leave Major League Baseball with this, as we're really short on time. Shohei Ohtani again, hit another one yesterday, another home run yesterday against the Astros. His league-leading 39th of the year. And check this out. It was the 5th game this season also where he hit a home run and stole a base in the same game. The only other player to do that in the major leagues this year is a pretty good baseball player. You know, Fernando Tatis Jr. Yeah, he's also hit 5 home runs in 5 games. He's hit a home run and stolen a base. Shohei Ohtani, it's funny because I call my grandson, as you know, Babe Ruth, because I don't want to call him Sincere. I think that's a lousy name. I love him to death, but I call him Babe Ruth. Shohei Ohtani is the next Babe Ruth. I mean, this guy, I don't know that he'll be dynamic or have the historicity at the end of his career. That's a huge statement considering Babe Ruth really is Mr. Baseball, because again, you can't go back that far and have a kid under the age of 30 years old tell you any baseball players pre-Babe Ruth era, but everyone knows Babe Ruth. I always say he's the most iconic athlete in history of sports. I believe that. And Shohei Ohtani is doing something nothing short of miraculous. This guy is incredible. He's also now tied for home runs by a lefty in a season in Angel history, that 39, and that was Reggie Jackson who did that in 1982 at 39 homers for and he's still got a lot of games to play. And again, not a lot of games to play considering the 8th no-hitter's already been pitched. They'll probably, if there's one more, that takes Major League history. What an exciting year in Major League Baseball. And Ohtani, a big reason for that. A guy who goes on the bump, is very successful in the bump, and bats in every game. I mean, it's pretty damn cool, and I love that. So, we'll leave it right there with that. I'd like to be able to talk about that more. One other thing, if you're following our minor league team, obviously the Las Vegas Aviators have lost 3 straight to Tacoma. They have 3 more games with them on the road. Then they'll return this Thursday to a 6-game homestand against Albuquerque at the Las Vegas ballpark. And I want to congratulate Nick Allen, who is back on the Vegas team. He was promoted from AA Midland. And remember, he was just on Team USA. He won a silver medal with Team USA. So he's one of 6 Olympians that returned to Las Vegas to play for the sports. The other 5 play for the Las Vegas Aces, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. But also, again, which is pretty incredible for going on. And I want to say one other thing. The A's, by the way, have won 8 of their last 10 games. In the second place, 2.5 game behind the Astros. Don't think they're going to be coming to Vegas. I know a lot of us got excited. And the Tampa Bay Rays, I just had to mention, best record in the AL. I'm getting really sick of them. 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups, a Super Bowl. They're one of the favorites to win the NFC and the Super Bowl again this year, and they've got Tom Brady. Enough is enough. If they win the World Series, I'm never watching another game that any Tampa Bay team plays in. Thank God they don't have a basketball team there. That's all I've got to say, but it is an incredible accomplishment.
Well, they did have the Raptors this past NBA season, and they sucked. So
yeah, that is true. But pretty incredible with that. The Giants, of course, the best record in baseball. They've also won 8 of the last 4-10. They're 4 up on the LA Dodgers in the in the National League West. Pretty incredible. 75-42 record, best in baseball overall. As I mentioned, 5 Olympians back in Las Vegas, 4 of them for the Aces. Pretty cool. 4 gold medalists with the Aces. You had 2 that played on the national team in Chelsea Gray and, of course, Asia Wilson. Then the 3-on-3 with Kelsey Plum in the last-minute addition to Jackie Young. That is really cool. And, of course, Jisoo Park also played for South Korea. So 5 Olympians back playing in baseball right now. Listen, we are just about out of time. So we're going to say goodbye to you for today. I really appreciate, of course, our social media director, Spencer the Wiz Ostrovsky, and of course Chris Magnum Chapman back in the Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio producing the show. Always appreciate you. I'm Brian Feldman. We'll talk more next week. Of course, the Raiders are back on the road next week for their second preseason game in Los Angeles to play the Rams. I'll bet a lot of Raiders fans make that trip after what they just saw. You get to see fans, although I don't know if they're letting them in LA or not. Don't have that information, but also want to thank our producer, Residential Bancorp. We will be back same time, 8 o'clock next Sunday morning. We'll see you then.